Hey guys, it's Alex, and today I'm here to discuss Without You, a memoir of love, loss, and the musical Rent by Anthony Rapp. I'm not calling this a book review, mostly because even though every book review is inherently subjective, my feelings on this are just so tied to my emotions towards the musical Rent that I really can't even begin to discuss what I think this book does well or poorly. I was incapable of experiencing this book critically in any way, so this is just going to be me discussing my thoughts about various points that Anthony Rapp brought up throughout this book. This is Anthony Rapp's memoir. If you don't know who Anthony Rapp is, he is an actor who's perhaps best known for his starring role as Mark Cohen in the Broadway hit musical Rent. I'm a big fan of Rent, and a big fan in particular of Anthony Rapp. I think he's a wonderful actor, wonderful singer. I know there are several valid criticisms of Rent, but I'm really not going to discuss that in this video. I'm just going to discuss everything I enjoyed about this book. I gave this 5 stars and honestly adored every single second that I was reading this. I'm not usually very into Broadway musicals just because I don't have any access to see them, but because they did a film production of Rent, just taping the stage, I was able to view it like that, and it's so wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and just I enjoy Anthony Rapp outside of Rent as well. I follow his singing, and I really enjoyed listening to him sing. So my best friend gave me this for Christmas, and I read it, and it was lovely. If you like Rent or if you like Anthony Rapp, I highly, highly recommend picking up this book because it was just, I loved every second I was reading it. I do want to say the tagline is probably the most accurate tagline that I've ever seen on a book. A memoir of love, loss, and the musical Rent. This book literally opens with him leaving his friend's funeral to go audition for Rent, and I feel like that's kind of just indicative of what this book was like overall. His friends or family would die or go through traumatic things, and then he would be a part of Rent. And that was kind of just like what this was. And also his various boyfriends throughout his time while Rent was active and while this book was taking place. But the general point was people die and Rent is awesome. That was kind of what this book was. I really wasn't expecting this to be so emotional for me, but I do think that was in part because I underestimated my love for Rent. I'm so emotionally attached to that musical and various aspects of it that reading this book, I was already kind of on edge, and it didn't take too much to just push me over. I cried through a good portion of this book. I think I read the first 66 pages of this in December and then put it down for a month because it was just literally too much. Like, I could not handle how much it was making me cry, and I just needed some space for it. But it was so wonderful. I normally give books like this 4 stars, like celebrity memoirs of celebrities that I enjoy, but this was just, it hit really close to home for me. I think I cried from literal excitement at a few points over learning new things about Rent because I've never really looked too much into like outside information of it. I just sort of always took the musical at face value, so it was so interesting and so cool to learn about some of the changes that were made because he talks about Rent in all of its forms, even at the very beginning when some things were very different. My favorite scene from Rent is an argument between Mark and Roger during Goodbye Love, and reading the initial scene and what it was like originally before it was changed was just so different and just so touching. And one of those things, I hate that they changed it now. Like, they ruined my favorite scene because it would have been so much better the other way. But it was just like so much fun to learn new things. Like, if you're interested in Rent, there's so many new things about Rent in this book that I hadn't known and were really cool to find out. I also cried a bit because of how sad this book was. It is really emotionally crushing. Anthony Rapp doesn't pull punches. A lot of this book is about his mother's decline from cancer and her eventual death, which was just heartbreaking. And I think that hit me especially hard because he feels a lot of guilt over not being there for his mother. And I had a friend who died of cancer when I was in high school, and I kind of also felt a lot of guilt about not being there for her. So it hit a little close to home there for me, and I think that was why it was just like extra emotional and extra hard, and I just needed to like take kind of a breather from it. I'm not usually one to get heartbroken over other people's sadness in memoirs or nonfiction. Like, it does make me sad while reading it, but when I put it down, I'm like, okay. But there's just something about his mother's death that felt so visceral and real to me. that it made this book really hard to get through, but like really wonderful and touching at the same time. Like it was one of those books that really it hit me so hard that it was difficult to read, but also simultaneously wonderful. This random small thing that like really doesn't matter, but that I particularly enjoyed was kind of his use of profanity. A lot of books use profanity in either one of two ways, if they use it at all. It's either excessive and they use it a lot and it's just a normal part of the story, or they use it very sparingly for big dramatic moments. And both of those are fine, but Anthony Rapp kind of used it sparingly but casually. And I really enjoyed that. Like, he didn't swear much, but when he did swear, he didn't save it for like big important moments. He'd just casually be like, oh fuck, I'm late. And it would just be like super casual and just I really enjoyed that. Like I know that's weird and random, but that's like kind of how I swear. And that's just like what's natural to me. Like it doesn't have to be every other word, but I like that it was so casual and laid back. It was like that weird little thing that like makes me happy even though I swear to God no one else would probably notice that reading this book. It made me really happy. Another thing that I noticed about myself while reading this is that I really don't like sex scenes in nonfiction. I'm not the biggest fan of them in fiction either, just like in general, I don't tend to prefer sex scenes, but I can get over it in fiction because it's fictional people. But when it's real people, I feel like I'm invading their private life even though they're writing this book. Like Anthony Rapp was just very open about his sexual life, which is fine. I'm not shaming him for that at all. It was just every time he started discussing in depth about his various sexual experiences, I just wanted to shrivel up inside and die because, like, it makes me so uncomfortable to hear about, like, other people's sex lives and stuff. There's not, like, too much of that in this book. He's just, like, very open and okay with sharing it. So, if you, like, really hate that kind of thing, maybe steer clear of this because, like, he's kind of down with telling you about his various experiences at all ages, and I was not super in love with reading about them, but like I got over it. It was fine. It wasn't too much of the story. He was just like okay with sharing it, and I was like, ooh, I don't know that I necessarily want to read all of that. But this is a 5-star read for me. This was wonderful. This was surprising. I didn't expect this to be as wonderful as it was for me. But I do love Rent, and if you love Rent, I definitely recommend picking this up. If you're not a fan of Rent or Anthony Rapp, I don't really think you would get anything out of this book. Sometimes with celebrity memoirs, they're still really worthwhile even if you don't care about the particular celebrity. But I do think with this one, you have to kind of love either Anthony Rapp or the musical already, or there's just not going to be anything here for you. Which is fine. Like, he definitely wrote this for fans of Rent, and I appreciated that as a fan of Rent, and I would recommend it to fans of Rent, but perhaps not everyone else. Let me know down below if you've read Without You and what you thought of it if you have, and feel free to flow with me in the comments because there were so many things in this book that I was just so excited to learn about, and oh god, the change in the argument between Mark and Roger in Goodbye Love crushed my soul. Like, I literally cried and just like spent 40 minutes texting my friend that I was not emotionally okay. And I actually looked up a lot of the old versions of the songs because you can find them on YouTube, which was really cool. So if you're interested in like looking up the old versions and like the audition versions and things like that, they are available on YouTube and I appreciated listening to them. It was very strange, but like also kind of wonderful. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see y'all again soon.